Hey, this is going to be a little different format. We are just talking about the movie Men by Alex Garland. He just came out with Civil War, and I saw this movie. So for those who don't know, Alex Garland directed Ex Machina. I think he was the writer too. And I think he writes and directs most of his movies. Alright, so writer, Ex Machina, Annihilation, Men, Civil War. Director, Ex Machina, Annihilation, Men, Civil War. Okay, and Devs, the TV miniseries, which I did watch, but we are not going to talk about that today. So he kind of really hit the ground running when it came to Ex Machina. It was a beloved movie about how inscrutable women are, just in general, how you can just never tell what the hell they're thinking or why. And so it was a big deal. It was it's a movie that I love, that I've seen a million times. And then his follow-up was Annihilation. I was excited about that because of Ex Machina, and I saw that in the theaters. And I feel like he stretched out a little more, in the kind of things that he really likes to do or wants to do. And it was less impactful and I think less resonant. Like Ex Machina really struck a nerve, but Annihilation kind of had, it was kind of boxed in. It didn't really have as much appeal. Then after that was Men, apparently, which I hadn't even heard of. And it just showed up on streaming at one point. And then when I saw the director, I was like, okay, well, I will give it a whirl. It is currently streaming on Max, so if you want to go check that out, pre-spoiler, so I don't have to give it away. Although it might suit the audience to get a trigger warning about this one, so it's got some things in it. It has some things like overt discrimination, so be wary of that. If that's the kind of thing that will hurt your feelings. So, like I said, Ex Machina, great movie, loved it. It's got some certain themes in it. Then Annihilation has some other kinds of themes in it. And then you've got Men. And to paint a picture, let's paint a good quality, beautiful, detailed, maybe not that detailed picture of what Men is, at least set it up before I say spoiler warning, and then you can go watch it and then come back. So Men is about a woman who has a less than ideal relationship, we'll say. She is in a marriage and she wants out of the marriage. So she tells her husband, and you get these little flashbacks as they're going along of what happened in the marriage and why she's in the situation she's in. So the way it starts out is that we know that something happened related to the marriage that dissolved it, that ended it, and she is now going on a vacation, or she's going to this like little cottage, little village area where she will mingle with some village people. And I want a joke related to that phrase, but I can't think of one right now. So anyway, she's going to this village, she's mingling with some village people, and she's just trying to take it easy after this event that occurred related to her marriage. So that's what I will say pre-spoiler. So we're going to get into it now with the spoilers and details and all the way through the whole damn thing. So if you want to go watch it, go watch it. I think it's worth a watch. It's at least trying to be more than, greater than most of the movies that come out nowadays. So have a look at it. I know, just squander away a couple of hours. Most people could take a couple hours less of doom scrolling on whatever, and just have a peek at the movie. You can do both of them at the same. What am I saying? Okay, so anyway, but the Men now, you find out these little snippets of their relationship as you go along, and you find out that she wanted a divorce, and she was telling her husband that she wanted a divorce. And he was not having it. He was not a big fan of that particular development. And so he was getting toxic. Very important word for purposes of this particular film. Saying that, no, I'm not going to let you leave me. And if you do, I'm going to kill myself, etc., etc. At one point, as we continue along the storyline, she's in this village and she's meeting these people around the village, and she has kind of these weird encounters with them. She's staying in a beautiful place, a beautiful little house with a grand garden, and it's not a little house, it's a substantial house. But so she's staying there, and she has this beautiful garden, and she's taking it easy. She talks to a friend occasionally about what's going on. And there's this guy who's the housekeeper there who owns the place, and he's a little weird. So she's doing this, but we find out that she says, I want a divorce with her husband. They're in her apartment at the time. He says, nope, not doing that. And they get into a scuffle for some reason. I think she dissed the Cubs or something. I don't know. But so they get into a scuffle. He strikes her like left hook. I don't know which hand he is, which is significant if he's left-handed versus right-handed, whether it was wrong or not. So it was just, he struck her. I think it was the left hand. And it was a hook. It wasn't a straight. It wasn't a jab. It wasn't an uppercut. So she is fed up at this point. She tried to be kind of gentle about it, diplomatic about the fact that she just didn't want to be in the marriage anymore. But now she's like, okay, well, you have since punched me in the face. So subsequent to the punching, I no longer am going to be civil about this. And so she physically removes him from the apartment and yells at him and tells him that I don't care anything that you have to say. We're done. I'm never going to talk to you or see you again. Just get out of my life. So, of course, after that, then he realizes the error of his ways, and nothing else happens. He goes home and reflects on his life, and she has a wonderful vacation. That's the end. Or is it? No, because he goes up to the neighbor, the above neighbor in the apartment building, and there's some ambiguity about this, but we will talk about why that's significant in a minute here. So he either is trying to climb down onto her balcony from the top, from above, or he's committing suicide, but wants her to see that he's committing suicide. So the next time that she sees him falling from the floor above her, and they lock eyes, and he plummets to his doom. So this is the traumatic event that has spurred her to go on this little getaway thing so she can recover and deal with all the traumatic emotions that are going to result from being first punched by somebody you once loved and then having them plummet to their doom and all the mixed emotions you might feel as a result of that. So they go on, and it turns out, okay, you've got the one who's like the innkeeper, and he's a little weird. And then she just goes out for a walk, and she runs into this kid. But the kid has kind of a weirdly adult-like face. And the kid is like, hey, play this game with me. Play this game with me. I demand it. And she says no, and he gets mad and starts calling her names and because she won't play with him. She is kind of, in a way, not rescued, but a priest shows up with an oddly familiar face. It's Samuel L. Jackson. No, it's so it looks a lot like some of the other men who are around the area. And the priest tells her, tries to get the boy with the man face, says, okay, move along, leave her alone, don't be a dick. And so he goes and he's mumbling his curse words at her. She sits down with the priest so they could have a conversation about what's going on in her life, or she can confess, or whatever you do with priests. That is not a setup for a joke. This is an adult woman, so it would make sense anyway. So she's sitting with the priest. They're having a conversation. She's telling him, okay, this is what happened. I'm feeling really terrible about all this kind of stuff. You could tell she's struggling with the fact of whether she should feel guilty or not related to what has happened. And he hits her with the bomb and just says that, oh, well, men sometimes just need to hit their women. And maybe it was your fault for everything that happened to your former, now eviscerated husband. So she understandably has an emotional reaction to this situation and is frustrated by this and storms off after telling him off and goes back to the village thing and calls her friend, who's another woman that she knows, and they talk about this kind of stuff. Okay, so we've got this thing, and then she goes to a bar at some point, and she's meeting some of the patrons, and this actually, it's kind of embarrassing, because this is the only time that I actually realized that it was the same actor who was playing all the men in this village. So, the kid with the man face, I thought that was just like a kind of odd-looking kid. I didn't realize that's really, really stupid of me. But it was because they go to the bar, and then all the guys, they're just kind of generic guys, and all the guys have the same face, the same guy's face, just done a little differently in each one. Oh my gosh, I forgot about the naked guy. That it's not like a reference to my house or my night or anything. No, it was a naked guy who showed up in her garden. So a naked guy showed up in her garden, and I don't I don't think he did anything. I think he just showed up in the garden. I think he's just walking around. I mean, not that that's not significant. I'm just saying that it wasn't. I don't think there was anything else that happened. I mean, I would remember it if I saw the same thing. It would stick out to me. That's an unfortunate choice of words, but it would be significant to me at least if I saw a naked guy in the garden. Okay, and not because of the kinds of nights I have. This is going to start a rumor. Not because of the kinds of nights I have. I'm just saying that it would stand out to me, but I don't remember him doing anything in particular at the time. She calls the police. The police show up and like shoo him away, and they say he's just a crazy person, and so don't worry about it. Oh, and I think they arrest him later because he shows up. Okay, whatever. It doesn't. You can watch the movie if you want to know all the particulars because it's not really that important. So anyway, now we've got this idea. Okay, it turns out that all of the people in this village have the same man face. So it's got to be something allegorical. It's not something literal about, they're all related or something like that. So this is an incest village. It's not like that. So she goes back to her house, and then somebody tries to break in the front door, and they're like sticking their arm through the front door. And a lot of the, it's like belligerent, it's scary, and she doesn't understand what's going on. I think, was that what happened? That they stuck it through with a knife? Either they brought the knife to the party, it was bring your own knife. Brock? Can you just call it Brock? I kind of want to do that now. It's a really handy acronym for bringing your own. I don't like the idea of every party guest having a knife, though. I don't know what the point of that is. That's not important. So anyway, whoever brought the knife, she has the knife. They're sticking their arm through the thing and trying to grab her. And so she's just like, I've had enough with all these weird people. She had the naked guy. She had the little kid with the man face who was messing with her. She had the priest who's saying awful things. The innkeeper's freaking weird. The naked guy showed up again, tried to attack her. So she uses the knife and like it's sticking its arm through the mail slot. I don't think it's meant to be a pun, sticking through the mail, although it might make sense for what comes later. Another unfortunate choice of words. It sticks its arm through the mail slot, and she stabs the arm. Just bam, knife all the way through it. Okay, victory, and the thing's stuck here now, so I call the police, and they're going to show up and be able to handle this business. But the guy has other plans, or at least the arm. I guess we can't really gender the arm yet, but if it's trying to commit an act of violence, then, although she's pretty violent in this movie, never mind. So it pulls its arm through the deal, and the knife is still stuck in it. So as it's pulling its arm back out, the knife is cutting all the way through the arm and the hand. So it cuts it in two halves. Then the assailant is trying to attack her more, and but it's got its arm in two halves, so it's all weird. The police show up at another point, but it turns out the police man, who has the same face as all the other men, is actually an antagonist as well. So it becomes this chase thing where she's running throughout the house, and she's being chased and attacked, and this man thing is showing up, and the man thing with separated two arm thing is showing up and attacking her. And she's slightly miffed at this. We do get cutbacks throughout this thing to what happened with the husband. And as she's being chased and running into more men, like at one point she was in the car but stops, and then the innkeeper guy throws her out of the car and takes the car and tries to run her over. So it's just all the men are not great. All right, that's kind of the primary thing that you need to get from this series of unfortunate events. But then we cut back to what happened to the husband after he fell off the thing. I mean, it wasn't that much of a mystery. You don't think that he, opened a Wendy's or something. It's like you're falling. There's not a whole lot you can do in between, the preceding event and the ultimate event that's likely to happen. So he falls, but on this, like, wrought iron fence with the spikes and stuff on it, and we see his body. Number one, he's got like a horribly busted ankle, and one of his arms is completely torn all the way through because it got stuck. It stabbed through his arm, and as he was falling down, it sliced all the way through his arm. So we realized that the men that are being represented in the village are actually wearing costumes, and they're from modern times. No, are actually representing the injuries that he had. So it's purely a metaphorical representation, of the fears that she has related to her, what happened to her ex-husband. So then we arrive at the resolution, if you want to call it that, and at the resolution we have this man who's still got the injuries that are representative of the ex-husband, and he has now stripped himself naked and is kind of stumbling and falling down backwards at every few steps, and giving very graphic birth to another man who has the same face. And he does that several times over the course of way too long, until it gives birth to her naked husband who has the injuries, who kind of plops down on the couch and turns on a game and just wants to be left alone, but she has questions. So she begins asking, she's like, "What do you want from me?" And he says, "Your love." And then she kind of looks slightly bewildered and forlorn, but also with a little bit of understanding, not like sympathetic understanding, but understanding of the situation and what has happened so far in her trying to deal with these things. So then, of course, they live happily ever after. Or, no, it's just weird and it cuts out, and that's the end of the movie. So, that is Men. Now, so many things. Number one of the things that filmmakers like to do, especially pretentious ones, not necessarily to say, like, Ex Machina wasn't especially pretentious. Annihilation was a little more pretentious, but not too horrible. This one is not as smart as it thinks it is, and certainly not as important, useful, or artful as it thinks it is. But when you have a movie that has a lot of symbolism, you have to be very careful about the line that you walk between telling a story that is on the surface cognizable, that you can recognize, and on the other hand, telling a story that isn't, that is just based on whatever the metaphorical meaning of the things are. So a movie that does it well is something like There Will Be Blood or No Country for Old Men. These movies, they have a lot of metaphorical significance, especially There Will Be Blood has a lot of metaphorical significance, but it sticks with the reality of its story. There are even other movies that will veer into, hyper-reality or surreality, but they still keep the bones of the storyline, so you can still be invested in the emotional undertakings that are going on between the characters. But in this movie, about halfway through, I think it's about halfway through, you completely lose all tension. There is no actual interest in making sure that or caring that the main character survives or does well or anything like that. All that disappears because now you recognize very clearly and obviously that this is all metaphorical. Once you see that the guy is all the same guy, in the village, and the way that she tries to evade the attackers and the way the police act and all that kind of thing, it all suggests that it's just a metaphor. It's something about her internal emotional journey. And once you're taken out of that, you can't get that back. It's just over. So from that point on, there's no tension. You don't care what happens to her or doesn't happen to her. You're just waiting to see what is being expressed by the things that are happening. So that's annoying. That's annoying thing number one. Annoyance number one is that. Annoyance number two is that it is extremely one note. So the only thing that it actually means, beginning to end, all the writing, top to bottom, all the visuals, etc., the only thing that it actually means is men are toxic. Oh, gross, those toxic men. Why do they do so many terrible, horrible things? So you have the kid initially with the man face saying, "Oh, come and play with me, play this game," and she says no, and he's like, "You bitch." And I've acted that way many a time, so I don't want to be biased here, but it's what I'm saying is that That's one way. And then the priest right after that is like, oh, well, men hit their wives sometimes, and maybe it's your fault. And the movie, for the movie's purposes, obviously those things are at least one of those is a grotesque thing to say. But from the movie's perspective, she is entirely in the right from beginning to end. Everything that she does or doesn't do, or cares about, or feels, or anything like that is completely justified. There's never a sense in the movie where they're creating some kind of, or worried about, or interested in some kind of ambiguity about her motivations, or what she should do or shouldn't do, or whether she was guilty to some degree in what happened with her husband. The movie just cares to validate her and say men are bad. So I don't know if Alex Garland made this for his wife or what, but this is something that it beats you over the head so consistently with this idea, the toxic masculinity idea, that it really gets old really fast. For example, like the guy is so over the top when it comes, her ex-husband is so over the top about all that stuff. And okay, I'm just gonna say this, not to be, not to attractiveness shame the lead female actress, but there's no man who is going to go that nuts over this girl. It's not gonna happen, okay? But he is just like, oh my god, no, I'll kill myself. I'll kill myself if you do this, and then eventually punches her in the face. It's like, okay, this is a little excessive. It's over the top, and then immediately commits suicide or negligently commits suicide right after their their separation or whatever. This is one of those things, it could have been a complex question about, okay, what fault does she have? Like, say she is, and the movie has no interest in this, say she is really selfish, or she is manipulative, or she belittles and attacks him, or she urges him to commit suicide because she says he's worthless or something like that. Then that would have created some kind of an emotional, intellectual ambiguity that people could be interested in, and it would be an actual question, and you can go on either side. You could say that, well, no, he needs to act like a man and stop being a little whiny bitch about it, and realize if she doesn't want to be in the relationship, she doesn't want to be in the relationship, and you screwed up somewhere, and that's just the way it is. Or on the other side, well, she could be a good wife. She married him. She could be a good wife and be supportive and understand when he needs some kind of support, emotionally or otherwise, and not merely and only think of things in terms of what is beneficial to her emotionally. So that could have been a question, and that could have been something that was explored through the different men, the different representations of men. Obviously, given that there's one actor playing all the men, except for the ex-husband, then the point is that it's supposed to represent men in general. But there could have been something about, the way that she interacted. There could have been good things that the men did, and so there's this ambiguity about when they become hostile, and or there could have been some trigger that she engaged in that wouldn't justify it, but it would be something more interesting than what came out of it. But instead, it feels really, well, it doesn't have any tension. There's no real emotional investment or interest, and it's really one note as you go throughout the whole thing. There are some interesting visuals, and I think the actors, the two lead actors, the guy who plays a bunch of guys, and her ex-husband all do a pretty good job trying to sell this this very weird situation. Like, she's always sincere in her acting. She doesn't like nudge and wink and say, oh, this is metaphorical, so I'm gonna play it in a different way. I think she does a good job. But I think conceptually it really shows the limitations of curiosity or willingness to go into those areas from Alex Garland. He also has this like weird thing of like, and I don't know, people can take from it what you will, but I've seen 3 of his movies. I haven't seen Civil War yet. And in all of the movies, number one, females are either the obvious main character, in Annihilation. Not only are they the main characters, but he excludes males from the major adventurous portion of the movie where they're supposed to go out and fix things. He says males aren't capable of doing that. And then in Men, the female is the protagonist. In Ex Machina, just look at it generally. Like, what is it? What really happens in that? So the inscrutable females that the men are trying to make, they're trying to create this female that they can use for whatever pleasures they want to use, and that they can control, and that they abuse. I mean, one of the biggest things in Ex Machina is that there are a whole bunch of iterations of this particular female. There's one super hot one too. I can't remember. There's at some point one of the robots was super hot. Not to say Alicia Vikander is not super hot. I mean, she's pretty hot. But so the point is that when you put hot naked girls in your movies, it's an excellent thing. Was that the point? Speaking of, when I started this damn movie, this men movie, when I started it, it said, in the beginning it has the thing that says, oh, this has language and graphic nudity. So I'm like, score. Thank you very much. I haven't seen this in a while. In a movie, looking forward to some graphic nudity. Pornography is really bad for you, but when it's in this kind of context, it's totally fine, even if you rewind a few times. So I'm excited about watching this movie. Now, I'm sitting through, and I just want to say, and I think that everybody can agree with this, male, female, whatever side of the political spectrum you're on, if it says graphic nudity as a preamble to a movie, that should be graphic female nudity, okay? Not graphic male nudity. Can we please all agree on that? I know we do. I know nobody is disagreeing on that front. If it has graphic male nudity, it should say graphic disgusting nudity. So can we please at least all agree on that? Please. Pretty please. I would appreciate it. So, yeah, that's what I was talking... Why was I talking about nudity? So there was something with Ex Machina that was... Oh, it's all the violence against women that's going on in there. So, but the woman, the simulacrum of a woman, the robot woman, eventually kills her male patriarch and escapes while making the other one look stupid and, besting and outsmarting all the males who are involved. In Annihilation, like I said, the males turn out to something inherently about men make them not able to go on this adventure. And spoiler alert for Annihilation if you haven't seen that, but by the end, they're not actually the people that they are. They are some kind of a weird alien thing. So similar to kind of a robot situation. In Men, you've got things that don't represent actual people, actual individuals. It's just about the metaphorical representations. And again, it's a female protagonist. But the point is, this guy, Alex Garland, has got something. And in Civil War, the protagonist is female as well. So he's got something going on, obviously, that is being expressed in his artistic output. I mean, women being threatened or suffering violence, but also being the protagonist of something rather than the general stand-in. Because you have in Ex Machina, you've got the ginger guy. He's the purported or ostensible, as somebody who's read books and things might say. He's the ostensible protagonist, but really the main character is Alicia Vikander's robot, because she's the primary subject, she's the thing of interest, and wins over everybody, by the end. And then, like I said, in Annihilation, it's just the chick, and in Men, it's just the chick. And in Civil War, it's just the chick. And there's this thing that showed up. I think this is what I was originally going to talk about, but then I thought about nudity. So this thing that shows up where he has this kind of speech that he has the female give that is directed at a man and says, I don't care about you or what you think or anything else. I never want to talk to you again. I never want to see you again. That is in 2 of his movies out of the 4. And weirdly, both of the men that were being talked to at the time that they were making these speeches were black. The actors happened to be black in both of those situations. So I don't know if that means something or just the fact that he would have a woman who says, I never want to speak to you again. Because it's this very particular kind of a dialogue or speech that she gives that is saying, cutting the guy off and saying, we can never interact again. As opposed to saying, every other kind of movie dialogue that would be in that kind of context. I don't know. It's like psychoanalyzing going on. But anyway, so that's the kind of strange thing. When you've got a movie like Men is, like I said, it's pretty one note and it doesn't really have an interest in ambiguity. It's more propagandistic than that. It's just about one narrow idea and kind of beating you over the head with the narrow idea, especially if you're a woman. Because apparently Alex Garland likes violence against women. I'm not going to say that. That's probably libel. No, it'd be slanderous in this context. So he doesn't like that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it just shows up in his movies. And I'm also not saying that he secretly wishes that he was female. I'm definitely not saying that, just because all the protagonists end up being female. So having said the things that I'm not saying, I do want to say I think it was worth watching this freaking weird thing. But like I said, there is graphic nudity that is the bad kind of graphic nudity. So if you have to cover your eyes at that point, or have a partner who can cover your eyes as necessary, and still be watching, like taking one for the team so they can remove the cover from your eyes once it's safe. But yeah, big trigger warning for Men, the movie. So anyway, yeah, that's just what I wanted to just what I wanted to talk about when it comes to Men. I appreciate it. I hope all is well. Let me know if this kind of free form floating style is a little better than the other more rigid style. It seemed didactic the way that I did it before, because I had so much to effing go through, and that took like each of those episodes take like 10 to 15 hours to produce and everything, and this takes took the time that it's taking me to say this right now. So because it's very minimal editing too. So if you are okay with this, then I'll just do a whole hell of a lot of these. Nudge wink. But anyway, so thanks very much, and hope all is well, and I'll see you on the next one.